So several years ago, I was in Seattle visiting my parents, and I noticed that my mother wasn't wearing her diamond engagement ring and the wedding band that went with it. And of course, that had been on my mother's finger since I was, born. And so I noticed it was gone right away. And so when I asked her about it, she told me that she had given that ring to my niece, my older sister's daughter. And this reminded me that on a previous visit, my mom told me that she had given one of her diamond earrings to my nephew, my older sister's son. And he was going to make an engagement ring out of it. And this reminded me that she had already given the other diamond earring to my other nephew, my older sister's other son, and he had given that diamond to his wife in her engagement ring. So let me tell you the truth. I don't care about diamonds. I could care less about diamonds. In fact, when Deb and I got engaged, we made a point of not buying diamond engagement rings. So we have to this day these little $10 silver engagement rings. They've lasted a long time. We went to the Pike Place Market in Seattle and bought them. So we made a point of not having diamonds. So I really could not care less about diamonds. But if diamonds are being handed out, I have 2 daughters who might like them. So it's funny how jealousy and resentment can kind of creep into our consciousness and get a foothold even about things we don't really care about. So I think there's a lesson to be learned in looking at today's parable of the prodigal son through the eyes of the older brother, the older son. And it's a lesson about jealousy, right? So in one way or another, just like this older brother, we all have a voice in our heads that says from time to time, what about me? What about me? Am I getting left out? So no matter how much we own, no matter how well we've done, no matter how much our parents love us, what about me? That voice is the voice of our small self, of our ego, of our old self. Paul says our old man has taken over when that voice comes to us. So that's the voice that believes that there are not enough good things in life to go around, not enough for everyone. So that voice is stingy most of the time. And that voice always thinks that more for someone else means less for me. And I really think this is true. That's why so many people in our country today lose their minds when black or brown people, queer people, or foreign people are offered the slightest bit of hospitality, just the tiniest bit of room to breathe in this country. People can't stand it because they think more for them is going to be less for me. So if we listen to that voice, it causes a lot of unhappiness for everyone. Now that said, let's be clear. What happened to this older brother in the parable was not fair at all. He was cheated out of part of his inheritance. By the time the younger brother had returned from his adventure, half of the family wealth had been squandered. And since he was the oldest, he probably, in the ancient Near East, he probably would have expected to get all of it. Usually the older son got all of the inheritance and took over. So he maybe lost all of it. He at least lost half. And then the minute the younger brother returns and gets one thin dime more from the father, he's now getting the older brother's inheritance. So now it's chipping away at his stuff. So the robe, the ring, there's that ring again. The robe, the ring, the sandals, the fatted calf, the party, the feast, the wine, all of that is coming out of the older brother's half of the inheritance. And the way it looks from this point out is that that's just the beginning. The younger brother's back to stay, back in the fold, back in the will. He's not going to be treated like a hired hand. And his brother is essentially cheated out of his inheritance. So now just imagine a friend comes to you and says this, says, you know my younger brother, right? The one who is always screwing up. Let me tell you what happened. You won't believe this. He lost half of our family's money. And then he comes crawling back to our father, and Dad throws him a party, a huge party, welcomes him home as if nothing ever happened, and now is giving him even more money. So if a friend said that to you, you would likely say, your brother is an idiot and a scoundrel, and your father's an idiot to be taking care of him again. He's a fool. So like most of us, the older brother reacts to this homecoming with anger and jealousy. And it's funny, the anger isn't only about the possessions he's losing. The anger is because the older brother equates possessions with love. And so he essentially says to the father, because you have given him more, you must love him more. How could you love him after all he did to you? How could you love him more than me after all I have done for you? So in all of this, I think we're likely to take the older brother's side. But, as is often the case, you go back to the beginning of this gospel story, and it seems clear that it's the older brother who's the one in the wrong. So remember, Jesus begins telling these parables after religious leaders criticize him for welcoming sinners. So that would make the father in the parable out to be Jesus, because it's Jesus who, like the father, welcomes back a sinner. And the youngest son would represent the tax collectors and sinners who Jesus regularly welcomed. And the older son represents the self-righteous religious leaders. So let me just put a little bookmark there. Often people read this and they're like, oh yeah, aren't Jews really religious and self-righteous? Jesus was Jewish. Everyone in these stories is Jewish. So it is not an attack on Jews. It's an attack on overly self-righteous religious people. That's what it's an attack on. And all of us who are religious tend to be like that from time to time. So the older brother represents this kind of self-righteous person who complains whenever somebody gets something they don't deserve. So while we may tend to side with the older brother, he's the one who's missing the point of life. And the point of life for Jesus is something like this: set aside your judgments and enjoy the party that's laid out before all of us. Don't waste a moment trying to figure out who is worthy and who is not. Eat, drink, and be merry with everyone, and you will discover the joy of life. So if the Father is Jesus, we learn a great deal about Jesus' love, like what it was like. So first of all, the Father saw the Son when he was still far off, which means that Father has been waiting for, yearning for this Son to come home. And when he saw him, unlike some fathers, he didn't retreat to the house and say, well, here he comes, let's see what he's going to say. He ran out to meet him. He hugged him. He kissed him. And then, this is really interesting if you follow the text really closely. So the Son has this apology all worked out, and he's rehearsed it word for word. And so then the Son tries to get this apology out of his mouth to make things right, but the Father only listens to half of it. He only gets half of it out, and the Father says, hey, bring the robe, bring the ring, bring the sandals. So this is a sort of like Jerry Maguire, shut up, you had me at hello moment. You know that film? Like, as soon as you walked in, my love is there for you. So there's only like half an apology, and in a way, no big moment of forgiveness. He doesn't say, I forgive you. So it's sort of like us thinking that we would need to apologize to the sun to get it to shine on us again. No, the sun's light is always shining. Or we would need to beg the rain for forgiveness before it would nurture the earth again. No, the rain comes again and again and again to nurture the earth. So this is the Father's love for the Son. This is the kind of love that leads Jesus to welcome tax collectors and sinners and anyone else. So Jesus' point here is that this is how we should welcome tax collectors and sinners. And here's a funny thing about this, especially for kind of self-righteous religious people. Given how self-righteous people can be, maybe we can be, why would tax collectors and sinners want to hang out with a rabbi like Jesus in the first place, right? If people are calling you a sinner, why do you want to hang out with them? And I think the answer is something like this. If we really loved people the way Jesus loved them, without a hint of judgment, everyone would want to hang out with us. If we just threw a party for everyone, who wouldn't want to come to that party? So as I said last week, Jesus was creating a new kind of economy, a new kind of family in the Holy Spirit, where even people who have no money are fed. As the prophet Isaiah said, "Ho, come get bread for free." That was what Jesus was creating. So this parable is a kind of glimpse into that new family, where you are welcomed to the table, whether you deserve it or not. And really, if you look at this, neither son deserves to be at that table. So the younger son at the beginning completely disrespects his father. "I don't want you, I want your money." And the older son is just as disrespectful to his father. So neither one really deserves to be at that table. So what we learn is life isn't really fair. We don't get what we deserve, really good or bad. What we get is invited to the table. So life isn't really fair, but it can be a party if we let it be. It can be a celebration if we can simply stop asking, "What about me?" So the truth is, the Christian church has spent a lot of time and energy trying to distinguish sinners from saints. And the truth is, we are all both sinners and saints. And the plain truth is that Jesus welcomed and ate with all people, sinners and saints, tax collectors and sinners, and scribes and Pharisees, all sinners and saints. So if the Father in this parable is Jesus, we learn that the world was not created by someone with the older brother sort of ledger mentality, who deserves what. Getting what you are owed, getting what you deserve, is never going to happen. So in that way, this parable is not just, it is not fair, but it is a party. And it's a party where everybody is welcome and everyone has a place at the table. And in the end, what could be better than that? Thanks be to God. Amen.